with the title SCACUF, Scapac, and the challenge of the fourth conclave. Again, the subject is SCACUF, Scapac, and the challenge before the fourth conclave. On Monday, October 23, SCACUF webmaster made public in a video presentation his own account of how funds raised through SCACUF website have been handled between the website, SCACUF, and Scapac for the revolution. In the report, in which he seeks essentially to dismiss any appearance of wrongdoing involving allegations of fraud and embezzlement connected to funds raised through the website, the question that most people would want to know is still left unanswered, though many haven't realized this or discovered this. Roland Emene, the webmaster, delves into his report with two rhetorical questions. Was money embezzled? And was there corruption? He answers the questions with a categorical no, using a recent audit report of the website. In answering no to any appearance of fraud and embezzlement, he explains exactly how much money came into the revolution from the two online platforms of Braintree and PayPal that were the channels through which funds were raised. In presenting the figures and how they were used, the webmaster appears to have generalized the allegation that Scapac hasn't been receiving money from the website instead of specifying that Scapac hasn't received money only from the PayPal account. As far as we know, there hasn't been any contention or allegations from the folks managing Scapac that the website isn't forwarding donations to them. They have always acknowledged donations from the website coming from the Braintree donation platform. The bone of contention here is from, according to our findings, is that funds raised through the PayPal platform were essentially hijacked. The funds never showed up or forwarded into Scapac bank account before withdrawals were made upon it. That is to say that, as we speak, nothing of the over $30,000 raised through PayPal in the website has ever gone into the bank account of the revolution. Before we proceed, we would like to bring to your attention the fact that we at the Southern Cameroons Journal have been privy to these allegations of financial impropriety from the website since August. However, we deliberately choose to stay clear of it, to have the governing council take care of it and resolve it in-house. Our decision was informed by the negative publicity the subject was going to give to efforts of fundraising. But this far, what we have seen from the players within the governing council is accusation and counter-accusation, dismissive tendencies resulting to each party hiring surrogates to publish defamatory and blasphemous audios and write-ups against each other in efforts to exonerate themselves and get the problem to die a natural death. In this editorial, we seek to set the narration straight as we know it. In doing so, our goal isn't to instigate further schisms within leadership. We are embarking on this now in the hope that, with the fourth conclave only days away, the issue would not be dismissed as if to say it has been taken care of, whereas the crux of the matter remains unresolved. Our fears are that if this issue isn't taken care of at this conclave, but dismissed with a broad brush as leadership is trying to do now, we would have lost such a golden opportunity to finally put things in order. The problem and acrimony will only continue. The website had two accounts through which money was being raised for the revolution. There was the Braintree account and the PayPal account. Scapac was a bank into which all the funds raised went into. However, Scapac has said repeatedly that it was never aware of the existence of the PayPal account and that money raised into it was never forwarded into Scapac. It was being clandestinely taken out and used without the knowledge of Scapac. The working agreement between SCACUF and Scapac stated that all funds raised for the revolution, especially those from the website, must go into Scapac. But not only did PayPal funds not go into Scapac, Scapac wasn't even aware of the existence of the PayPal account, not until donors began to complain that Scapac wasn't acknowledging their donations. The webmaster's report is well packaged and well articulated. However, the problem in it is that it just doesn't present anything new that informed people already know. And it just doesn't answer the main questions that many informed people are asking, and which ought to pave the way to a meaningful resolution of the problem. What the webmaster presented is basically information that auditors already put out there. In fact, he quotes them 99% of the time in his presentation and acclaims them for such a good job. He quotes the amount that has gone into Scapac from Braintree. But as far as expenditure on that particular amount is concerned, he refers people to Scapac for accountability, and he is entirely correct. However, quoting the amount raised in the PayPal platform, he does something a little different from what he does in the Braintree account. Notice that with the Braintree figures or amount, he says he has no idea how the amount raised was spent or is being spent. That if you really want to know, you got to consult with Scapac. But observe that when you come to the PayPal account, he quotes the figures and then quote expenditure, which suggests that somebody somewhere was using the PayPal donations instead of having them sent to Scapac bank account, like in the case of the other account with Braintree. So we are left wondering why the webmaster will be rendering expenditure for one account and not for the other account also. This is the crux of the matter. Weren't the funds in PayPal supposed to have equally been routed to Scapac bank account like in the Braintree account? Who was authorizing expenditure on the PayPal account amounting to over $26,000? And whose bank account was being used in the transactions? Why was Scapac not made aware of such transactions until an alarm was recently raised? This is the bottom line of the problem at stake, and they beg for elaborate answers. This is the way that PayPal functions. When you create an account with PayPal and actually have funds in the account, there are 4 ways through which PayPal releases the funds to you. Number 1, you can either make purchases online and pay directly using your funds in the PayPal account, or number 2, PayPal can issue you with a debit card in the amount of the funds you have in the account so that you can then go out and spend the money as you want. Or number 3, they can issue the owner with a check and the owner can go out and cash the check and spend it. And lastly, number 4, the 4th option is to get the money transferred from PayPal to the owner's bank account so that he then uses it the way he or she desires. Either way, all these 4 methods entail that somebody would have to withdraw, transfer, or do transactions with the account. In the webmaster's report, we are only told how much came in and how much was used or spent. The report falls short of telling us who actually did the withdrawal and the spending from the PayPal account. The report doesn't explain why, unlike in the Braintree account, funds in PayPal account were not withdrawn into or sent directly into Scapac's account. If the funds in PayPal were not directed into Scapac, and the webmaster cannot name the person who transferred or spent the money, it means that the webmaster was equally the paymaster. Mere figures and expenditure are not enough evidence of transparency and good accounting. The fact is that money was withdrawn from PayPal that was supposed to go into Scapac account. It was clandestinely removed and clandestinely spent. The right thing to do was to have the PayPal funds deposited into Scapac account, and then from there, expenses will be made. That was not the case. A responsible way of resolving the matter would have been for the governing council or the leadership, and most especially the chairman of the council, Sisi Kutabi Julius, and Atta Milan, Secretary General, to have stepped out and say, listen folks, some mistakes were made here. Money was removed and used in the wrong way. It wasn't right. But we are going to fix it. And next time these issues will not repeat themselves. Instead of doing so, and for once putting the issue to rest, the Secretary General in particular is only trying to dismiss it with a broad brush as if to say it doesn't matter. But it matters because this revolution is desperately in need of outside funding. If you cannot account for a few $1,000s, how will you be able to account for millions when they start flowing in? This is the reason why this issue should not be dismissed with a broad brush. We are fighting and running away from a fraudulent and very corrupt regime in Yaoundé. And we are not about to start building one from inception. On Monday night, we reached out to the webmaster and posed the concerns we have raised here to him. We asked him why Scapac wasn't aware of the PayPal account from the onset. And we also asked him specifically who authorized the withdrawal of funds from PayPal and the bank account that was actually used to do the transactions. The webmaster said PayPal wasn't strictly put in place for any nefarious activity as people think. He said PayPal came automatically with Braintree. However, he didn't explain why Braintree's donations were set to go into Scapac, but that of PayPal wasn't. Who authorized transfer of funds from PayPal to be spent? He said SCACUF. But who in SCACUF? The name wasn't really forthcoming. Into whose bank account was the money from PayPal transferred into? He said it was transferred to another PayPal account in Dallas, from which cash was withdrawn and paid out to SCACUF or SCBC. When you take a look at the webmaster's presentation, a discovery that we find is that SCBC, the television station, is essentially writing its own invoices and asking that Scapac should pay, instead of presenting Scapac with original invoices from the satellite company that they are paying the bills to. And it is here that fears of financial impropriety are surfacing. Why can't the SCBC present its original contract and original invoices from the satellite company to Scapac? Why should Scapac have to pay bills to the satellite company, but whose invoices are prepared or generated from SCBC? This is not by any means an indictment of SCBC. It is a call for proper accounting and procedure. If that is not done, people will continue to be under the impression or suspicion that somebody somewhere is misusing funds because transparent records are not being provided. We interpret the webmaster's presentation coming up on the eve of the fourth conclave a surrogate-like job, sort of lobbying the conclave to not bother discussing this problem. And it may not be any making of his, but it is totally wrong. It is out of place. If this conclave rises without cleaning the finances of SCACUF, the same clandestine expenses will go on after, and it will stand on the way to fundraising for this revolution. The conclave must look into these issues and rise from there ready to move on in an amicable way. No one person in the organization should have to have the powers to withdraw funds spent from paper, no matter how justifiable the expenses are. No one person should have the power to stop payments into Scapac, as the Secretary General has done recently. It is almost a month since the world tour of the Governing Council that took them to Europe and the USA. And just imagine that not up to $5,000 has entered into the coffers of Scapac from that tour. The Secretary General is on record as saying that he stopped all the payments from going into Scapac account pending the just concluded audit. The audits are now concluded, but the money still have not been released into Scapac accounts. These are the issues that people attending the conclave must address. We cannot be fighting a corrupt regime and then building a fresh nation on the same foundation. Our next editorial on the conclave will be out soon. Stay tuned. Again, this came to you from the Southern Cameroon's Jonah. I am Chris Ano, and thanks for listening today. You can actually reach us with comments using the email editor@southerncameroonsjonah.com. Again, that email address is editor@southerncameroonsjonah.com. You can equally use another one called editor@cameroonjonah.com. Again, I am Chris Anu, and thanks for listening today.